What is up, guys? Welcome to the Meeting Up Podcast. I'm Andres.
This is RB3.
I'm Sabrina.
And this is the podcast where we talk about your favorite filmmakers and the deeper meaning within their films. And we are back using something different, RB3.
Yeah.
It is not Squadcast, even though I really like the name for a specific reason. Squadcast.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, I mean, it's all coming together. But now we're on StreamYard.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Might
what
change
happens.
next week too. Yeah.
It might change next week. We might use Zoom next week. Probably
Yeah.
Instagram Live the following week. Like it's, you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
But either way, guys, this is how we're gonna sound. This is how we're gonna look for this episode. This episode, we're talking about a filmmaker that hasn't made too many movies, but the two movies he's made are pretty significant. And he's currently doing a show, or it's airing a show that's on Hulu that some people are talking about. I happen to be one of those people, called Devs. So RB3 decided that'd be a great idea to talk about Mr. Alex Garland this episode.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited because I've made it very clear, if you follow me on social media, which I recommend you do, that I like his brain, if that makes sense. I like his style.
Yeah.
And I really think his films come together in a unique way. So I'm excited to talk about it because I don't really know what you guys think about him. And I kind of want to start there, and I kind of want to go to the GOAT, and that's RB3.
Oh, you point that way.
I know.
Yeah. Sabrina is the GOAT.
You know what? Bye, guys.
Yeah, nah.
Goats.
Yeah, we're both we're all ghosts. All three of us are ghosts. So here's my thing. I think that Alex Garland is a very talented filmmaker. I think that he does. He does writing and directing much better than probably a lot of directors in Hollywood. That being said, I think there's a lot of people who give him a lot more credit for like being the sort of like heady, edgy, innovative kind of storyteller. And I just simply like don't think that's true. I think for me, I take that he does a lot of really good work when it comes to like style, when it comes to symbolism, or all of that stuff. He just does like really, really well. And he does a lot of like, his writing is usually kind of smart too. But I think that, you know, when people say like Ex Machina is like the most original science fiction movie ever made, I just don't think that. I don't think Annihilation is like, people are like, oh, ending explained, it's so deep, so metaphor. I just don't think it is. Like, I think if you watch 80 other sci-fi movies, you're going to catch at least 4 of them with the exact same story, but he just tells the story really well. So that's my take, you know.
Can I kind of go off that, RB3, real quick? It sounds like you don't like the hype around him.
Yeah.
But not necessarily him as a filmmaker.
I got no problem with him. I think he's a great filmmaker. I think he's probably one of the best in terms of directing.
It's the conversation around him.
Yeah, I think we need to readjust the conversation a little bit. That's all. I think he should get a lot of credit when it comes to like directing, when it comes to like getting performances at actors and just crafting like interesting sequences. But I'm not gonna sit here and say that like any of his movies have ever like had this like mind-blowing twist like that the media kind of portrays it out to be, because I watched 5 minutes of Ex Machina and I knew what the ending was going to be. I watched 5 minutes of Annihilation and I knew what the ending was going to be. So that's just me.
Well, the ending of Annihilation is in the beginning, but besides that, it starts off with like the ending. So you do know the ending. He shows you, but I really, really do enjoy Alex Garland. I feel like I fall somewhere a little bit more towards where I think you are, Andres. But I think he's really, really innovative. I think he takes, with the 2 films that he's written and directed, which we'll get into obviously a little bit later, but with both of those, I think he takes themes that aren't anything extraordinary. We've seen it before, but I think he takes both of them to another level with his direction, with his the way he portrays everything, the symbolism. Like I truly, the first time I saw Ex Machina, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So I definitely, I'm in that range, RB3, where it really did. It stuck with me for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's totally, I'm not saying like,
yeah,
people who watch his films like shouldn't be mind blown. Like if you are, that's the more the better. You know what I mean? Like I just have the natural hater mentality, so I can't overcome it. I just can't overcome it.
Yeah, it's definitely. I feel like every one of his films. I mean, there's two, which I've seen in theaters, has always been an experience, and there's no denying that. Especially crowd reaction. Again, the theater experience. It's so good. It's so precious because you get and you get that feeling of like, what is going on? This is crazy. This is weird. This is trippy, and I think that's kind of his brand. Is like trippy, grounded sci-fi, if that makes sense, where it's not quite like spaceships flying in outer space in a battle. So it's grounded, but it's also really weird and trippy, and people are confused and don't like it because they feel it's too pretentious. I think that's
like hard. He does like hard sci-fi. He does like hard sci-fi that like we see like you know some like
that's
older
a better way to say it.
Yeah. Well, you know, he does like he deals with themes like that old filmmakers like Andrei Tarkovsky. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. Themes that like you see dealt with in his movies like Soulless. You see themes that you see in like other filmmakers like I'm losing my train of thought so quickly. Jodorowsky from like the 60s and the 70s too. A lot of those themes. A lot of Ridley Scott. That you see a lot of early Ridley Scott.
I was going to say Ridley Scott, so you beat me.
Yeah. So it's like
I just told my roommate that earlier.
Yeah, with like the Ridley Scott comparison. I mean, it's very amp, and you kind of see it all throughout his filmography, and you can see that he appreciates science fiction, and he has like a real eye for not having like a cartoony kind of more fantasy written portrayal of sci-fi like you see in like Star Wars. Anything else is more of like a humanistic, metaphorical, symbolic brand of sci-fi that he's trying to achieve, and he does a pretty good job at
it. Yeah, if I'm being honest, like I think part of the reason why I'm such a fan of his is because those happen to be the things that I'm really into. Sci-fi, like if I had to pick one, that's my genre. That's the one thing that I love so much and I've loved for years. And I happen to be the guy who's really into like weird tech and like where humanity is going with technology and the blending between the two. I just came back from San Francisco like 2 months ago, and I'm always fascinated by the idea of Silicon Valley and the idea of power in one location. I talked to you about it, RB3, on our Hunger Games episode, the fact that Hunger Games District 3, which is the technology district, is San Francisco. And the fact that Beatty, kind of like the head of that, he's like the mastermind, it was crucial to destroying the capitalistic autocracy dictatorship from President Snow. And I was like, oh, so it's like the idea of all this power that's inside one city that's seeing the highest rate of homeless people and the highest rate of rent out of any city in the world, and where more billionaires are living there more now than ever, have all this power in their hands, and they're using it for like Facebook ads and shit. And I just find that to be fascinating, of like the power of control being given to the few or to the one, and how they choose to use that. And you see that with characters like Nathan in Ex Machina, like Forrest and Devs. I think that's very similar. The Lex Luthor CEO, like richest man in the world, also smartest man in the world type shit. And Annihilation is a little bit more like metaphorical, kind of like the idea of humanity and life, and where we take ourselves and how we react to another species from outer space, and how we react to situations that we don't like. And it's fascinating. I'm just every topic he touches on, whether it's Devs, whether it's Ex Machina, or whether it's Annihilation, is a fascinating topic to me. So I think that's what makes me such a fan.
Yeah,
I agree.
No, I definitely think that, at least for me, I think when we're talking about his vision of sci-fi, it's a lot more apocalyptic, it's a lot more destructive. He kind of has more of a nihilistic take on technology, that it's like the end all be all kind of thing, that and not just technology, human interaction with technology is kind of the bigger general theme. And then you see a lot of that like through not only through his work as a director, but his work as like through a writer too. Like with 28 Days Later, Sunshine, like all of these films have very prevalent themes of like the end of time, the end of days, and like how is technology gonna play a factor in that? How is science gonna play contribute to that?
Yeah, no, definitely another good example. We're gonna talk about later when we do speak on his writing filmography. But yeah, it's really cool. His approach to kind of like humanity, what it means to be human, what makes us human, all of that is something that I find incredibly, incredibly fascinating. And again, with that whole grounded sci-fi, I really just like, I think he's so ambitious.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, let's get into it. It starts with our homie Ap124.
Yeah.
Of course.
It should be the Ap124 podcast at this point.
We honestly like. I would be down to do one Ap124 movie every episode. I don't know if you guys would be up to that, but honestly, I would love to do that. I'm really a hardcore Ap124 fan.
Oh yeah.
But it starts with a movie that got a lot of hype, and that's Ex Machina, because people were obsessed with this movie. And by people, I mean people on the internet. It was very much like an internet-driven movie. I remember, because all three of us kind of have a schmoes connection, especially you and I, RB3, but even Sabrina now with SEN. It was Christian Harloff who really was like slamming this movie into my head back when I was just watching schmoes and I wasn't, on the show. And he was the one who was like, the best movie ever. It's the top movie of the year. I've never seen anything like it. And I was like, oh God, I got to go find this movie in a theater and watch it in a theater. And people love this movie. And I'm so curious to hear your thoughts, Sabrina, because you have a little more positive take. I want to hear what it is about this movie that so many people connected to.
I think it's just kind of incredibly refreshing, as we said. So the first time I saw it, I didn't know what to expect going into it. And I was just kind of blown away throughout the entire movie on him subverting expectations. The way he portrayed the theme, which is kind of, again, like, as I said, humanity, what it means to be human. I remember seeing the scene that sticks out to me the most, and it's one of my favorite scenes of all time, is when he takes the razor and he like slices his arm and he kind of like looks into it, and it's after being in the room with the other what are they called? Are they just called like the AI? Like the AI?
Yeah, they don't give it a name. It's not,
they don't give it a name.
Like a replicant or a host.
So the AI bodies that he finds, and with like the peeling skin and everything, and he kind of just like looks underneath his own skin, and he really goes in there. And I think it's just the culmination at that point of like the entire, everything he's experienced in that house, being stuck, isolated, as we said, with the smartest man, the richest man, he has this entire huge space to himself. And seeing him dealing with that isolation, just being with him all the time, stuck around all this new technology that, normal people like us don't know exists. So then if we're brought into that, and of course, draw a connection to one of those, we go, like, we're like looking deep under our own skin, like, what's the difference between us and that artificial intelligence that has been created? Like, what they, underneath like their skin, they have all the inner workings, and it's like the same way we do. Ours is just organic and theirs is inorganic. But what's the difference?
Yeah,
it's like, I don't know. I love it.
Yeah, no,
I think it's a really, that's the thing that sticks out to me the most, and that's why I really, really enjoy this film, just because dealing with those like existential type of questions, I think, is extremely relevant all the time, because technology is always advancing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, RB3.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, like you said, Andres, like I too was excited for this movie because of her glowing recommendations from Christian, from all the other critics. I rushed out to Regal Cinema in Long Beach, California, over there in the town center. Rushed over there, watched it, packed house theater. And in all honesty, the first time I saw it, I was like highly underwhelmed. I had like I guess I just hyped it up too high in my head. And I think to me, I guess I had felt that way because I just watched. I think, you know, especially I think in particularly with Ex Machina, I think literally like a night or 2 nights before I had watched that Duncan Jones movie Moon, right, with Kevin Spacey and Sam Rockwell, and thematically like they're very similar. So like, and you know, as a sci-fi head, you know the common theme of sci-fi is like technology is usually the bad guy, the bad person. So as soon as Ava, or is it Ava or Eva?
Ava.
I think Ava, yeah.
Ava. As soon as she came on screen, I knew immediately like, oh, she's gonna be evil. And then as many ways as the movie tried to like redirect it, you know, because at least like while I was like underwhelmed, like I was always fascinated and like I was looking for clues because I had like this high-minded like expectation for it. But I figured out pretty quickly, like, yeah, she's going to be bad. And everything leading up to that point was just kind of alluding to that too. And, you know, and with a bad product, there's usually bad creators. So I kind of had an idea of where Oscar Isaac's character was going to land too. So that was the only thing I was like, I don't know. But I do think that like after my initial underwhelmment of it, I went back and then revisited again and again because, you know, it is a beautiful movie. It's one of the most well shot for a feature debut too. It's really well shot. Yeah. It's gorgeously shot. The production design is amazing. The blend of like the forest imagery and all of that stuff. I think the and just the house aesthetic too was really cool and interesting. The visual effects obviously won Best Visual Effects at the Academy Awards that year, so it was also really, you know, want to celebrate it like on the technical level and on a directorial level, it was just really well done. Even a lot of people say like a lot of stuff in there's pretentious, like the opening scene where he like first discovers that he's like part of this program and it's like all silence and all of his coworkers are crowding around him. It's really well directed. I just had a tougher time personally getting the hype of like the themes because I thought the themes were pretty like surface level, but but after revisiting it and rewatching it, and you're going to see me say this for like Annihilation too, and for mainly for Annihilation, that like the first time I saw it, I was underwhelmed, but like looking at the script, looking at like the structure, looking at like the metaphors and symbolism and all that stuff, it does go above and beyond what an average sci-fi movie would say, and it is in the top tier of sci-fi movies for sure.
That's my point. It is like I feel like I like to talk about. I think we like to talk about what makes a filmmaker, what makes a good director a good director, and like you said, man, it's the blending of all the things. It's not just the shots because that's your DP. It's not just the music because that's, you know, your composer.
Yeah.
It's not just the production design because that's your production designer. It's how you shoot, direct, organize, all those things. And I'm telling you, man, I know it's only been 2 movies, but look at the score in Ex Machina, the shots in Ex Machina, the acting in Ex Machina, the metaphors, the themes in Ex Machina, and look at the scores, the shots, the themes, the acting in Annihilation. There's no denying the guy is a incredibly talented director, which is kind of what's key, is like working everything in symphony and making it all make sense. Every movie or show he does, the score, the shots, the music, the acting is all fire. It's dope. And I think that's 100%. What makes him such a talented, you know, up and coming, I guess, because he's only had 2 films, director that inspires so much out of me as someone who loves sci-fi.
Right. I also appreciated like the characterization of particularly Oscar Isaac's character. You know, it had like this fun, like kind of spontaneity, and obviously Oscar Isaac's one of the finest actors we have like of this time, so he could add life into any character.
Did you guys notice that when you rewatch the movie? Is like, oh my god, he's funny. Like he's funny in the movie. Like I was cracking up the whole movie, and I was like, oh damn, this is really well done as far as a character who's like the smartest man in the world, but he's also like, bro, chill, bro. I'm the smartest man in the world, bro. Like he's so like, yeah, he's so chill and he's so weird, and you're like, okay, I get it. I get this guy.
Right, so that's what I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned this RB3 about like Ava being, you know, like evil, and then Oscar Isaac's character Nathan, kind of like the evil creator, evil product. I don't get that from this movie. Do you guys? I don't know why. I don't get that. I really do. I think it comes down to that question, like I said earlier, like what's the difference between the organic and the inorganic? And kind of like, just because, you know, she was isolated, she was in this like prison cell basically.
She's in prison.
If we had the chance to break out, even if that meant unfortunately leaving this man behind and like having to kill your creator who is keeping you enclosed, it's like, is that evil? I think that's where we kind of all come to that same understanding with the whole difference between the organic and the inorganic.
I mean, honestly, like I tweeted this out a couple days ago. I said, I'm watching Westworld, I'm watching Devs, I'm watching Psycho-Pass. Shout out to Psycho-Pass, one of my favorite animes. And it's all kind of saying the same thing. Even Ghost in the Shell, if you want to bring that in as well, where you're exactly right, Sabrina. You know, what's the difference between us and we are coded to do certain things. And I love the line in the movie that actually comes back in Annihilation, which I thought was funny, of when Oscar Isaac is breaking it all down as far as like what makes us AI and what makes us human. And he's like, no. It's nature or nurture. It's both. And he's like, no, it's literally both. Like if I wake up and I'm in a little box and I'm told I can never leave the little box and there's a world out there, I'm going to kill y'all. Like, I'm going to go crazy. It's not because I'm wired to be evil. It's because of what I'm experiencing, how I'm wired, and the combination of both. And in Annihilation, that actually comes back with the character of, I forget her name, Rodriguez.
Gina
Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then even she says it in the movie, which I thought was funny, when she's like, you know, oh, what happened to Oscar Isaac? And she was like, I mean, either something is like something killing people in there, or they're killing each other. And I was like, it's both. Like rewatching the movie, I was like, oh wait, they literally say that it's both. It's both us killing each other and something killing us, because that's human nature. You know, the self-destruction of humanity is to repeat the cycle of self-destruction, because that's what we've been brought up to do. I find it so...
Yeah,
I love it. I just love it.
The theme of self-destruction is definitely one that's like shared between Ex Machina and Annihilation. That's definitely one of the most prevalent themes, I think, in both. I think for me, it was like, you know, maybe Ava, calling Ava like quote unquote evil is not like
she's not
the right. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, I mean, that just goes to play into the more modern kind of interpretation of science fiction technology, right? Like when we're back in, for example, when we're back in like the 1950s, 1960s, sci-fi was like all about technology being evil and being afraid of technology. But as recently as like the 70s, the 80s, and particularly in the 90s and the 2000s, all of that kind of evolved into technology is not evil. The people who make technology are evil, and you inherit the code that you're programmed with, right? So that's what Ex Machina was definitely going on. So I mean, that's just Westworld. The original Westworld movie had that too, and then even the TV show. From some interpretations, Her has kind of that kind of theme too. So it's like, you know, all of these different sci-fi films, and I mentioned Duncan Jones' Moon earlier with Sam Rockwell. That kind of has that similar kind of theme as well. So it's like having that idea of, you know, what breeding technology means to what's the consequences, like the cause and effect idea, right? How does the cause of humanity lead to the effect of technology? And that's kind of the overall theme that you kind of get in Ex Machina. I mean, again, like, I think it's just a personal thing, but for me, I kind of just immediately caught that from like the first couple minutes, but I guess my headspace was already there, like walking into it. So I couldn't really, you know.
So not that she was going to end up being evil, but that she was going to be like the victor of it all, kind of like she was going to be the one to get out. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah. And you know, there's been other movies where we see like the robot figure kind of escape and then blend into real life. Terminator is another franchise. The entire franchise is about the idea of like what comes first, like the creator or the creation, and like what causes which.
Do you like predicting movies though? Like, is that something that like, if I can predict it, this movie sucks? Because I don't see it.
I don't like predicting movies, but if it happens, then it just means that like.
Do you feel like the movie's less than? because of that?
I wouldn't say less than, but it affects my experience. And I don't think, I mean, for me personally, I'm more impressed when I think I see where a movie's headed and then it doesn't go that way at all. Like, that's why I love movies like Parasite. That's why I love like movies like Eternal Sunshine or Her, or there's another recent one too that I saw, or, you know, Being John Malkovich. All of those films, like, you think it's going one way and then it has another way, then another way, then another way. I personally
so that's like a personal preference of yours.
Yeah. That's just more of a personal thing. I mean, I think if just by proxy of like watching a lot of sci-fi and just film and film in general, there's that whole like cliche of like there's only like 7 stories or 8 stories that in the entire world that you could tell. Like, I don't think that's true, and I think that's like a misnomer to even imply that, because a movie like Parasite exists because there's plenty of movies that explore different stories and different themes.
But there's still inspiration, right? I mean, you can still take from the past and use that as like an inspiration to show people who maybe haven't grown up with the sci-fi movies that you have. And then they watch Ex Machina and they're like, oh, wow, I've never heard of all this. They look it up and then they find out that the history of sci-fi has been talking about this for years. Yeah. And that's great. I mean, that's to be celebrated. I think that's what I'm a big proponent of. I love that stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of like personal preference, because I obviously, you know, everything in film, we can talk about it as much as we want, but everything is so subjective, the way people kind of absorb some things. The reason why this movie kind of hit for me was because I'm not one of those people that predicts. I literally just watch and I'm just like, I think about a lot. It's not that I'm turning off my brain, but like, I'm not thinking about how it's going to end. I'm just kind of there for the entire ride.
Yes. I'm so like, take me where you want to take me. Wherever you want to go, I'm here.
Exactly.
That's how I watch shit.
Yeah. And even in this film, when things are happening and you think for a second, like you do many little, because your brain is constantly working all the time and you do many little predictions that I don't really pay attention to them. But like towards the end, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful scene because I feel like Alex Garland subverts our expectations in tiny ways that we might even not like notice, especially me, who is not one of those predictors. The scene where she's putting on the hair, taking the skin, you literally think she's gonna come back out to him and she doesn't. Like I that entire scene before you find out she's not gonna come back out to him, it's a really beautiful scene. It's wholesome. He's like watching her, she's becoming a person, and then all of a sudden she's like, peace out, like I'm good, bye.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That completely subverted my expectations.
It's a fascinating conversation of like, I love the idea of like, and Devs is all about this. So I'll kind of, you know, relay that conversation between Devs and Ex Machina because it's super similar as far as the idea of predictive algorithms and how prediction happens and how technology now is so expertly predicting human nature that we start to realize like what makes us human, and the coding inside a human is the same as a machine. And it's Westworld season 2, like for crying out loud, it's the whole season. And it's also the idea of like, who is AI? Is it Caleb or is it Ava? Because Caleb is, again, nature and nurture. He's a lonely dude. He's super smart. He works for Google. He lost his parents. That means he is coded to react to a certain way, which I still find the movie funny because it almost confronts it, where he's like, yo, this girl kind of hot though. So it's like that idea of like, I'm wired that way, so I'm gonna automatically be like, yeah, I like her. She's cool.
Yeah. Well, and then also Oscar Isaac literally makes Ava based completely on what he likes, what his character kind of likes. I mean, there's even
his search history.
His search history, yeah.
I mean, Blue Book is Google. It's the idea of like, if you, it's freaking Black Mirror. He's in it. He's in the same episode. It's Donald Gleason's episode in Black Mirror. It's like, if
that's I haven't seen it.
That's another
example. And he's in the same episode, which is funny. Shout out to Haley Atwell. Where if you copy everything that I do on my computer, you can get a pretty accurate representation of who I am and what I'm going to do in the future. Which again, I'm not going to spoil Westworld, but it's that idea of like, oh, we already know what's going to happen to you because you've been doing the same thing over and over again. So by the time 20 years from now, this is how you're going to die. This is who you're going to marry. This is what you're going to do. And it's, again, Devs does it too, where it's like the idea of the future and the past being connected. And I love that stuff. I love the idea of like, where is humanity going? And it's super scary if you think about it, especially with, I've tweeted about this, quantum supremacy and the idea of like elevating the power of computers and AI. What does that do to us, a selfish group of people who the biggest countries in the world control only 3 satellites, and they happen to be China, Russia, and America? Do we really trust any of those 3 countries? I, for one, don't. So it's that idea of like, who is Nathan? And he's so elevated above everyone else that he almost considers himself a god. He even says it in the movie, which is funny. It's a funny line because he knows exactly what's going to happen. And I think that's the subversion of expectation that Alex wanted to reach at the end, was the idea that, ooh, maybe I chose a guy who was too good. It was too smitten. I say smitten by Ava.
Yeah.
And he's like so in it that he's going to be like committed to getting her out, and she finds a way out.
She does that. And this is so funny because we're 30 minutes in and we're only on his first movie. So that's how I feel like, I feel like a really good indicator. That's what the thing is. I can talk about it. I made my roommate Eliza watch it, and she loved it. We talked about it for so long. She absolutely loved it. She hasn't really seen too much sci-fi. Yeah, exactly. Shout out to Eliza. She hasn't seen too much sci-fi, and she was super like blown away. And we were able to talk about it for a long time. And that, my favorite thing about film is the discussions that are to be had. So for this long on one movie, and we could still keep going, I feel like that's a really good indication, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead, man.
I was gonna say, regardless of how, if I don't think, and by the way, I'm not saying I don't like Ex Machina. I'm not saying I don't like Ex Machina. I'm not saying I don't like an. I probably say I say most people probably put Ex Machina as like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. I'm just saying I put it like a 7.5. Like, it's just a little, it's just, it's good. It's really, really good. It's just not like,
it really is a rewatch thing. I'm 100% with you on that, because it's the same with Annihilation. And we can get into that. Last thing I want to say about Ex Machina. I think you're right, RB3, by the way. I think it's the hype that kind of gets you, because it was so hyped up for me that I was like, oh my God, I'm going to watch Angels from Heaven. And then I was like, that was cool.
And by the way, there are times where like I go into it completely hyped and like with like maximum hype, and I do walk out with like the same level of hype. Like,
no, me too. But those are my favorite movies ever that do that, or favorite movies recently, at least. But last thing I want to say was that I kind of want to hear it. It sounds like all of you guys rewatched it. What was your rewatch experience? Because I'll start. Mine was, I see it by myself, obviously, and I was in a goofy mood, but I'm always in a goofy mood when I'm eating and watching a movie. But I was kind of talking back and forth how funny the movie is. It's really kind of funny if you break away the serious nature of the film. How Ava is like low key, like slowly taking off her clothes for the camera, being like, "Are you watching me?" And he's like, "Yeah, them wires, girl. Look at them wires." So I was kind of like ad-libbing shit that he might have been thinking, and that Ava was thinking, like, I dropped something, he's watching, and it just like plays into it. And then everything Oscar Isaac said was so funny. I love his lines of like, he's like, "Oh man, I think you're pretty effed up," and he's like, "You're effed up, man," and he's like, "Nah, man, you were like cutting your wrist. I'm pretty sure that beats me." Like everything like that he says is so funny that I don't know. What was your rewatch experience like?
It had been a few years. I meant to rewatch it not too long ago, and just kind of, because it's on Netflix, and it's been on Netflix, I think, for a while. But yeah, so sitting down this past week, getting to rewatch it, I remembered the entire story. But again, this was the thing. For some reason, every time I watch it, I want to almost pretend like I hadn't seen it before. So I just tried to go with the flow as it is. See if I could, since I knew the ending, see if I could pick up on anything new.
Did you pick up on anything new?
I noticed
Kyoko. Did you notice Kyoko? Kyoko.
Character.
My Japanese is rough.
What about her?
Her connection to Ava. I was like, I didn't really capture that. The idea that it's almost like an uprising. They were kind of working together. I was like, I noticed that before, but now it really kind of caught me that she is kind of a slave, like literally a sex slave. that she wants to break free of her chains, and Ava's inside a prison. I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely on the rewatch is where it really hit home for me about kind of there being no villain. It's just, you know, Domhnall Gleeson's character, he's kind of he just was a little foolish. He made a mistake. You know, that happens sometimes. Yeah, he was smitten. He was being a little fool. Oscar Isaac too, when they go back and forth and they are in that hallway, Kyoko, Ava, and Nathan, and you know, he's destroying his own creations and they're getting him right back, and they're just all going back and forth so slowly. It's such an interesting sequence that I paid a lot more attention to this time. And I don't know, that whole like, which one's better? They're destroying each other slowly and like just going back and forth. I don't know. That one really got me.
Can I jump in again real quick, RB3, and say that same scene, his reaction to dying. Yeah. He's like, oh my, really? Oh my God, there's a knife in me. Oh, and it's so funny. I was like, oh my God, this is hysterical. Even though it's really dark and he's dying. Spoilers. I thought that was so funny. The way he dies was like, oh, darn, another day. And he has a knife in his back.
Yeah, it's just that sequence is so interesting. The way they go literally back and forth so slowly. He gets her arm and then Kyoko stabs him, and then
score just rises,
and
like
and
the
they just
glares.
Little by little. This is not like a fight. Like this isn't like an action like fight sequence. They're literally just doing slow jabs at each other until there's the last man standing. It's a really interesting sequence. I really liked it. On a rewatch.
How was your rewatch, RB3?
I had a fun. I watched it again too, and I think one of the bigger themes that I kind of took away from it for at least this time around was like, I kind of always looked at it as like a sci-fi metaphor for technology and stuff like that, but it's also a metaphor for like imprisonment, captivity, all that kind of stuff. That's
exactly what it's about.
Yeah. So it's like so it plays a lot on, the idea of like and especially with all the characters. I mean, literally all the characters have like biblical names, except for Kyoko. But Ava.
I actually didn't know that, but that's really cool.
Yeah, Ava, Eve, Caleb, Nathan. These are all like biblical names. So it's kind of like the idea of like how like that kind of dichotomy of like religion and technology and human nature, and how all three of these kind of influence each other. It does do a lot of, and again, like maybe while I may not find like the particular ending to be the most mind-blowing thing, I do think like in terms of like writing dialogue and writing characterizations and writing characters and directing and all of that stuff, it does a really good job of like doing all of that. And I think that it just goes to show you, this movie, it still blows my mind that this movie won like best visual effects, because the year that it came out, the other nominees were The Revenant, Mad Max Fury Road, Star Wars The Force Awakens, and The Martian. So these are all movies with over $100
We thought about this, man.
Over $200 million budgets.
I'm still mad about it.
Really?
Which one would you? Which one do you pick?
Adding some wires to Ava's arm, like.
I don't know. I think it's sick. I love it. I think
really over the Martian, Mad Max.
Because I don't think best visual effects. Well, not in terms of Mad Max, I guess, but in terms of like Star Wars and things like that. I don't think best visual effects means the one that's like overwhelming. I think we've had this conversation.
100%.
We've had it before. I agree, but I'm saying there's still something to be
for
said
some reason,
about.
There's this one. I don't know. Yeah, no quality. Those are all quality movies. I mean, they're all nominated for an Academy Award. They have to be quality.
I don't know. I won't get into it because I can go off.
I'm like, we're already 40 minutes into.
Last thing, real quick. How do we not mention the dance scene?
I did say it.
Oh no, but I'm saying like, how did you guys react to that first time watching it? Because my theater was losing their minds. They were like, is this the same movie? Like, is this Ex Machina?
I love it.
And every time I watch it now, I'm just like, he's right. Sometimes you do gotta dance.
Yeah,
not wrong at all. Especially right now while we're in our homes. The same way he is isolated, social distancing. all of that's happening in that movie. Same thing for all of us now.
They were quarantined before the quarantine.
They were quarantined,
right?
Exactly. Oscar Isaac, Nathan did it before it was like a thing.
Right? And the way he's like, bro, you teared up your picture. And he's like, nah, bro, I'm going to tear up this fucking dance floor. Watch me go.
Yeah.
Dude, he killed me the whole movie. Let's move on to Annihilation before we stay here for 3 hours. Annihilation, man. I want to go straight to you because, again, I mentioned Christian. I gave him a shout out. He's the one who recommended this movie, Ex Machina, more than anyone else. Now I have to give a shout out to Dan Murrell. My God, he hyped up Annihilation so much back in the day when it was coming out. Shout out to Dan Murrell that I was like, I got to see this movie. And he was one of the big proponents of this movie, just like Christian was for Ex Machina. Mm-hmm. So I also went with crazy hype in this movie. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this very divisive film. It's not as beloved as Ex Machina. It's more split down the middle because people like Ex Machina quite a bit, but this one, people are split. And I kind of want to hear your thoughts, Sabrina. What was your first impression of this movie?
My first impression, I thought it was very dense the first time I watched it. I'm going to be honest, I did like it. I just didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to. Again, people were hyping it up. I loved Ex Machina, so I'm like, hell yeah, this follow-up is about to be sick. And it does get better on a rewatch because you're picking up on things, but I feel like it's one of those examples where it thinks it's more profound than what it is, kind of. So that self-indulgence gets to me a little bit in terms of this one, but I can definitely say that I have enjoyed it on more rewatches. Just recently, again, with my roommate Eliza. She loved it. She was mind blown. It was her. Yeah. It was her first time watching it. I love that you keep exposing
Eliza to more movies, like through the journey of this podcast.
Well, because Mackenzie and Eliza, whenever I'm watching movies, they're just like, "Oh, which ones do you watch this week? Oh, can I watch them with you?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah! Like, let's get it."
It's so good, right? I'm telling you, there's nothing like rewatching a movie you've already seen with someone who hasn't seen it. Like I do that with my parents.
Yeah.
Their experience watching Get Out, I always go back to it because I came home with the Blu-ray because I was like, this is my favorite movie. And it just came out. You have to see it. And I sat down and watched my mom react to it and just be like, oh shit. Oh, like her reacting to it was so fun for me.
Yeah.
Because she had the same reaction I did when I was in the theater. And I was like, this is so fun sharing a movie like that.
No, exactly. And that's the thing is that me and Eliza are both very vocal when we're watching movies, especially when you're at home, not as much in a theater when you're like going to bother people. But she's like, oh shit, what's happening? Like it's so fun to watch. I love experiencing that with everybody, especially even like when we saw Star Wars. I loved watching that with you guys. But yeah, so I have enjoyed it a lot more. I still have like a theory of what he's going for and stuff. So we'll get into that later. I honestly haven't researched. You know how people do those articles where it's like ending explained, whatever. I haven't like, unless it's something that's like, I don't know, it has to be a specific kind of movie for me to want to have an ending explained for me. I'd rather just kind of make up what I think and like take it for myself. So yeah, what about you guys? What are your
real quick going off that? This is kind of one of those movies where I've talked to you, RB3, about I hate like Spider-Man Far From Home explained. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What do you need to explain about Spider-Man? This is one where I still hate those videos though, if I'm being honest, just because I feel like what you said, Sabrina, like take away what you want to take away, talk about it with people that you feel might have gotten it or might be, but don't, I don't know. I'm just not a fan. Sorry.
I'm the same way. I just don't personally, but I understand why other people might want to have.
I get it.
Even something like Under the Silver Lake, which Andres has still probably not seen. Another week of you not seeing Under the Silver Lake, but that one was one where I was just like, let me get all that info, like because there's so much. That's another dense, ambitious, self-indulgent one. So this is one of those things, and I do get it, but I just haven't looked at any of it myself. So
sure, RB3,
Annihilation. I mean, this is another one that I kind of have a similar reaction to Ex Machina with. Went in with hype, left underwhelmed. And I think this one had a little bit of a harder time overcoming the underwhelmness for me, at least. I think for me, what this movie does, I think the first two acts are like phenomenal. Like the whole idea of like this military squad with this medical research person going into the jungle is kind of like Predator with a little bit of like those wartime movies like Apocalypse Now, where just kind of going to this mysterious like kind of acid trippy like forest and experiencing all of that. That was one thing that I thought was like really cool, and I thought that journey of seeing that and seeing all these characters go crazy and turning like this huge worldly sci-fi premise and make it a very character driven, psychologically driven thing is very like it's very deep, very powerful. It's almost like who's that writer, that novel writer who everybody references, like like Stranger Things,
H.P. Lovecraft.
Perfect, exactly. It's so Lovecraft.
I love Lovecraft. Lovecraft is like, I feel you.
Exactly. And this movie had like a lot of those vibes, and I appreciate it for what it was doing there. To me, I personally just almost can never forgive the ending, the last scene where it's like Natalie Portman dance. Spoiler alert. We spoiled Ex Machina.
Yeah,
already,
this is the meaning of. We're talking about the deeper meanings. Yeah. We gotta get into it. Spoilers are gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. But just the end scene where Natalie Portman is like dancing with a alien version of Natalie Portman, I was like, all right. I got what they were going. At that point, I had knew the idea of like this cloning, replication, how they made it. They made it a point multiple times to show how sometimes cells could clone themselves, and then the clone could sometimes absorb the original, and they made that point all throughout the story, and we saw that point with like Tessa Thompson. We saw with like a lot of these characters. We saw on not a sci-fi level, but on a character level, that evilness overcoming Gina Rodriguez's character. So that metaphor is just hammered home that the entire movie, and I really like what they were doing. It. I just think the whole idea of like Natalie Portman doing this whole like dance and pony show with like an alien, I was like, oh come on, what are we doing? This 10 minutes. Like this, that's much. But otherwise, I think
I was
that
like, get a girl.
Yeah, but otherwise, I thought the sequences were really well done. I thought it was fresh. I thought like the idea of there's a lot of moments that were, again, referencing Ridley Scott. There's a lot of like moments of like the original Alien that are just like pure suspense when they're all trapped in that one warehouse area, and the bear that makes the noises that they're making. I thought that was one of the most cool sequences I've seen in a sci-fi movie in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Think about Blade Runner-esque or early Blade Runner, and you think about Ex Machina. Think about this one, you think more Alien of the sci-fi horror. I'm telling you, man, that gator and that bear are horrifying. I still get shivers rewatching it. It's a bear. It's a giant mutant bear that it inhabits the last voice of the person they killed. That's horrifying. So it screams of a girl and her yelling out, "Help me," as she's getting devoured. That's the sound it makes. And then the gator is like an enormous shark gator that's like literally my worst nightmare. Like the idea of making a sci-fi horror movie, this to me was a huge success in that way. But I also have to talk about the score. The shots.
The score is one of the best scores. The score is easily one of the best scores I heard.
So good because it starts out so simple with literally a guitar strum kind of throughout the whole movie, and it ends in like this crazy dubstep like Annihilation hype disco party.
Very ethereal. Like I've seen it. I think even the music became like almost like a meme. I've seen people using like TikToks.
Yeah,
like
I think I do remember that.
Yeah.
Not TikTok, but I remember like tweets of
and Vines and Instagram. But yeah, people use that music in like funny ways. I've seen it a bunch of times.
But obviously, I'll shout out to the composer. But again, man, Alex Garland knows how to bring in different weird elements together, and it's the idea of like what happens when you splice DNA together with different plants and creatures and humanity and what our own destruction looks like. It's I don't know, I found it so fascinating. Obviously I agree the hype always kind of kills it for me, because I thought it was too hyped. I was like, all right, I get it, but it's a little too much hype. But again, Natalie Portman, I mean, that's all you need to say to get me in a movie. And Oscar Isaac, who's literally like The two Star Wars connections right there.
And easily Gina Rodriguez's best performance.
Yeah.
Jennifer Jason Leigh in this movie too.
Tessa Thompson is so good.
Yeah,
Tessa Thompson.
Really good. It was her and Natalie Portman were my two favorites in the entire movie.
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, that bear scene where Tessa is like dying, her sweat and her tears are like blending together. It's so good.
Right.
Yeah, Alex Garland is really, really great at pulling. Obviously, these are all very talented actors that have been in both Ex Machina and in Annihilation. But those performances they give, some of their best.
Yeah. Right. If anything, Alicia Vikander, she's incredible in Ex Machina. She's so good.
Yeah. No, he does a great job getting high level performances, and it's usually I think one criticism of Alex Garland's films that is a little valid, but also I think a little stretchy, is that sometimes people say that his main characters are a little shallow, and a lot of his supporting characters bring a lot more life to the film than like the main characters do.
Sure.
I think there's an argument to be made for that, but I think in this movie, Natalie Portman definitely had brought a lot to that part in particular, because it's like
she did.
It's like the dichotomy of like the cheating wife with a husband who's sick, and she's trying to investigate why he got sick and all of that stuff. So it was like a lot of motivation behind that one. So I appreciated it for that.
Absolutely. Any final words on Annihilation, Sabrina?
Well, so what I was saying, and this is actually shout out to my ex-boyfriend, because he, with the whole like ending explained. So I want to hear you guys' thought. Well, but I want to get your guys' thoughts about this. But the whole thing kind of being like the shimmer is like a cancer of the earth, and that's like the whole mutation thing that runs like throughout and everything like that. So after that, I enjoyed the film more. And I did get that because they really do hammer you over the head with like mutation, like
cancer, mutation, cancer.
Exactly, over and over again. And like, I do get it. And it is really cool. And I enjoyed it a lot more after getting that like explanation from him. I was like, oh yeah. I kind of got that a little bit. So on this watch, I had that in mind the whole time, and I did enjoy it.
Yeah. If you think about and if you think about it, it's even more like, I'm going to blow you guys with my weirdness. It's the idea of like this extraterrestrial cancer is almost course correcting humanity, bringing him back to the nature that it was before, because humanity's destruction has been so evil and so powerful. It's the idea of nature correcting itself when it's gone too far, and the idea of this thing that spreads and almost blends in DNA and breaks it down. And I also love Natalie Portman when she talks about God with Oscar Isaac, and that he made a mistake because we're, humans die, and there's other species like cancer that kind of live on, and we can keep multiplying our cells and keep growing and stay the same. And the idea of immortality being a flaw in God. And I was like, is it a flaw, or was God like, yo, them too crazy, they gotta die? Because if they don't, Earth would have been extinct like 1,000 years ago. Yeah. And the extraterrestrial being is course correcting that, or trying to, at least. Again, this is my thoughts.
Exactly. And that's the same thing. I completely agree with all of that. Do you guys have, just out of curiosity, do you guys have a favorite scene from the movie at all?
No, I mentioned the bear.
The bear scene is, it's wild.
I love that one. And then I really do love when Tessa Thompson is growing the greenery out of her body. I love that part. That is the one, the first time I saw it, I was like, that is sticking with me. I love that.
The one where it's found footage of Oscar Isaac opening up the guy's stomach is wild. Yeah. And then when you see what happened to the guy, where he gets split into the concrete,
to the concrete in the air. Yeah. That was dope.
That, to me, the production design of this movie, from the bear to the gator to that to everything, is so well done. It's horrifying. It's
going back to the cancer thing real quick, because I do think that's a big part of the analogy that there's. And salute to, obviously we're talking about not liking endings explained videos.
That's me. But no.
I just don't usually
Yeah, but
I know.
Salute to, I mean, new rock stars usually does that pretty good, and they mentioned a point like that too in their video, and then less is from a screenplay, less about the ending, but more about the overall construction of the film.
I like it. Yeah, he's great.
Less is from a screenplay. He had a great breakdown of like the script of Annihilation from beginning to end. So yeah, that whole idea of like this, again, it's sci-fi, it's a metaphor, and great sci-fi always has something to say about the greater world and what, you know. And I think this definitely is a little more ambitious than I say Ex Machina is. I think it has a lot. I think it has a little more to say. I think it has bigger things to say, and I think it has like more things to draw from in terms of like deepness and all that stuff. I think that is my only problem with it is, like I said, I think the ending was a little lackluster. But otherwise, I did appreciate the journey that it took to get to that ending. And and you know, we're going back to what you were saying, Andres, like the production design, the sound, the music, cinematography, all those elements all add to the overall cerebral nature that this movie was going for. So much appreciated on that front.
Yeah.
Alrighty, that's our conversation on Alex Garland's 2 films. Stick around for the break because we're going to be talking about his writing and we're going to be talking about devs, hopefully, because I love that. Either way, guys, stick around.
This ain't funny, so don't you dare laugh. With the 4/5 divide you in half. You getting at me equals a club half. You do the math, take you out the equation.
Check out our quarantine catch-up video, available exclusively on First Cut. Enjoy.
It's one of those things now where like people are using social media to like its full extent, which can be fun and it can be bad. Hopefully more fun than bad. But either way, what it's led to is like more transparent, you know, tweets and
everybody horny.
Thoughts. Everybody horny.
Everybody horny.
Like,
that's
what Iffy was controversial for? We all know Iffy. What Iffy was controversial for?
Iffy's my boy, bro. I've been on his show.
Yeah, I love Iffy, man. From Compton dude. But he was controversial in 2019 for the risque tweets he'll put out. But in 2020, he looking all right. He's shaping up. You know what I mean? Like
that's what it is, bro. It's the season.
Mine are pretty bad.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
Welcome back, guys, to the Meaning of Podcast. We're talking about Alex Garland, and finally, we've reached the moment. RB3. I don't know about you, Sabrina, but I've been talking about this show since the very first time it aired live on a Thursday night, and I sat down and watched it because I said, "Hey, that trailer looks dope. I'm gonna watch this damn show."
Right.
And I was blown away by that pilot episode. I immediately was in. Sergey was my homie. I was on Team Sergey. And Sonoya Mizuna. I don't know if her name. I'm saying her name. What's that?
Who plays Lily?
Who plays Lily? So we got like a Russian guy and an Asian girl playing the 2 leads of a TV show.
Yeah, that's like your favorite combination right there. There you go.
Right, and it's literally about like San Francisco technology, grounded sci-fi, quantum supremacy, something that I actually know about, which is wild. It literally was like a show for me. They literally were like, Ace would like this show. And I was like, yeah, I would. And I liked it right away. It's Sabrina, have you at least seen the pilot at all or no?
Okay. I haven't. I wish. Okay. I
won't spoil it.
No, actually, should I? You guys could text me when you guys are done. I could dip out. You guys should spoil it. Why not?
Nah, it's not
even.
No,
we don't have to.
Okay, are you sure? Okay.
Everything I said is all you need to know, really.
Yeah, and
then we'll throw out ideas and concepts.
Okay.
Yeah, and the season's not even over yet, so like, there's really we can't even spoil it because we don't know where.
Actually, I swear on God, I know I tell you guys this about everything, but I'm genuinely going to watch this show this week. So
just like I saw Under the Silver Lake, I'm sure.
You have to. I won't talk to you next week. I won't do this with you next week if you haven't seen Under the Silver Lake. So get to it.
Yeah, I feel like this conversation can be shorter anyways, because let's face it, we're halfway through the season, or maybe more than halfway.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about conceptually the idea of this show. To me, RB3, this is my little mini rant that I did on the Snelling episode. Shout out to Ryan Snelling when he talked about The Outsider with me. And it's the idea of taking television and how Alex Garland literally has gone on every single media platform to talk about how the reason why he did this show was because he's so done with movie studios. I mean, notoriously, Paramount was like hating on Annihilation, and they did not want to do an international release of that movie.
Yeah, they
sold it to Netflix. They sold it to Netflix. So they've kind of actively gone out of their way to hate on Alex Garland.
And to go back to Annihilation too, they actually wanted him to like change the ending and reshoot a bunch of stuff. And they actually did make him reshoot a bunch of stuff that actually ended up being in the thing. Yes. I guess the whole cheating storyline was
I noticed it.
Creation. Yeah. So.
And it's one of those things where like this show is a creation of almost a defiance of movies and what movies are supposed to be, which is why I'm such an Alex Garland fan, is because I'm totally with that, because like, where's the action scene? Where's this? And and the notes that the studios give you are kind of disappointing and so limiting that when FX/Hulu gave him the opportunity to make a TV show of whatever he wanted with a big budget, and he said, you know what, I'm just going to make a long movie of something that I love. And he did that with this show called Devs. It's the idea of where we're headed with streaming and movies, right? And I've talked to you guys about this back when you was in your apartment, Sabrina. Yeah. The idea of like the quality, heady, smart, Oscar baity type stuff, or different type of like A24 type movies might be streaming only, and then the crazy Black Widow, Lion King blockbusters are going to be theater only. And it's that idea of Alex Garland as an example of that, going to TV and kind of almost giving up on movies because he's so bitter with what he was told of all the notes of like action scene 1, action scene 2, cheating storyline, like all the stuff you need to put in a movie that studios tell you that's kind of a myth if you're being real. And all the good stuff is going straight to streaming. And I consider Devs to be good stuff, at least so far. Like maybe they can disappoint me. But I just love that idea of like where we're going with streaming versus theaters as far as quality, because I feel like quality is a big deal. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Sabrina, before we get into like a little of the ideas they have.
I actually wasn't aware about the cheating storyline kind of being like studio interference, being like, oh, put this in for like added spiciness. And now
did you know about the Paramount stuff? The selling to Netflix because they didn't like the movie?
A little bit, but I didn't really pay attention to that because I don't like a lot of those like, oh, behind the scenes, like, look, this actor, well, I like it, but I try not to pay attention to it because I don't want it to affect my overall like thoughts on a film. So I pay attention to it, but I take everything with a grain of salt because who knows. But I didn't know about that, and now that you said that, I hated that entire part. I completely forgot about it. It was so unnecessary, and now that you said it, I'm just like, wow, that really sucks.
Paramount, or not just Paramount, but also Skydance, who is Cole, who's the brother of the guy, you know how Anna,
I know who you're talking about.
Anna Perna, Skydance, they're both Allison or something like that. Anyway, they thought that Annihilation was too heady and too intellectual, so they wanted to dumb it down a little bit. But going to what Devs like represents for TV, I mean, it's on FX, so FX already has that elevated brand. I mean, I think most people recognize FX as like the HBO of a basic cable. They really elevate.
They make good shit.
Yeah, salute to Atlanta, salute to Dave. Dave is also pretty good on FX too. It's pretty funny. I mean, if you're into, I guess, penis jokes, then it's for you. But but they have some really funny. But Devs, I think in particular, I mean, I'm always interested and seeing a show by a single writer, single director. To my knowledge, there wasn't like a writer's room behind it. I think it's just all completely written and directed. No directing team behind it. It's just all completely Alex Garland from start to finish, which is ambitious. And it's, you could tell that it's pretty unfiltered because it has a lot of different intertwining storylines, and it kind of deals with a lot of themes that I think a writer's room, you could tell when shows have you could tell the difference between shows with a writer's room versus a movie with a single writer director, or movies with a writer's room, or a movie with a single writer director. It's a little more confident. It's a little more ambitious. I think this show definitely goes for a lot more ambitious. I think for me at least, all of Alex Garland's work, sorry, I just hit the mic, so you probably heard that. But all of Alex Garland's works kind of get progressively more ambitious. I think Ex Machina was good, but it was great, but it wasn't like as ambitious as Annihilation. I think this Devs is more ambitious than Annihilation was. And they're dealing with a whole completely different science fiction concept whereas, I think Ex Machina is like sci-fi meets containment thriller kind of vibe. And I think Annihilation is like sci-fi meets like war movie kind of
horror,
sci-fi horror, sci-fi war, all that kind of stuff. This one kind of embodies sci-fi meets like almost like mystery. It's like a mystery thriller almost, because there is something that happens at the end of the pilot that propels the rest
you to keep watching.
Yeah, that propels you to keep watching. And it does become like a kind of interesting like detective story, like towards as it keeps going. So I totally dig what they're doing there. I dig like the again with Ex Machina we talked about the themes of tech giants and all that stuff too. It represents that really well. And I think what is really hooking me to the show, and I think where I got disappointed by Ex Machina because I felt like I was familiar with the genre. I think this show probably won't have that because it's dealing with the concept of like multi-theory or multi-universe theory, which is a relatively new sci-fi concept that really it became popular because of Rick and Morty, but a lot of movies are barely starting to like wet their feet into it. The Marvel universe is starting to wet their feet into multiverse. So this is something that's kind of a newer concept in sci-fi that we haven't really played with before. And fortunately, this is one of those shows that's kind of on the forefront of exploring that.
I'm very familiar with multiverse stuff because of comics, because of DC, because of Flash, because of X-Men, because of literally so many comics that I grew up with. Spider-Man, for crying out loud, is like the king of multiverse. So as soon as they started going into that, I was like, oh, I am in. Oh, this is literally just give me everything I love. And they're just like throwing money in my face. And I'm digging it. I'm just like, I love it.
I can't say anything more about the show without saluting the great Nick Offerman for his part in this show. Cool. I mean, it's just great seeing Nick Offerman act. For one, he's by far and away probably the most underrated actor in Hollywood. And
that's the only thing I know about this show, by the way.
It's Nick Offerman. Yeah,
that's all I know.
Yeah, and he's that dude in this show. Like he's killing it from episode to episode. He's just straight slaying it. So
it's the idea to me, RB3. And again, we talked about Jesse Eisenberg off camera, and you mentioned BVS, but that's people always have. I wish I can write. Maybe I can write a script about Lex, because people always struggle to how do we make a Lex Luthor modern, and it's that idea of like power corrupting and being smarter than everyone else, so you're predicting what they're doing, so it's so boring to you. That's what Nick Offerman kind of represented to me, where I was like, oh shoot, he's kind of like a Lex, where he's like not evil, but he's still like the most powerful, smartest man in the world, the richest man too. And then I thought of Ex Machina with Nathan, and I was like, if you kind of blend them two together, you can get a cool idea of like what a super genius billionaire Lex Luthor can look like in modern live action. Obviously we get it in comics and he's awesome in the comics, but we haven't yet seen a good live action Lex. That's the first thing I thought of was Nick Offerman. I was like, oh, he's killing it. He's just dropping bombs the whole show.
We need to see a Joker-esque $20 million budget movie written and directed by Andres Cabrera. That's what we need to see.
Give me any movie studio out there. Give me that. If you give me Lex, I will kill it. Believe me. This is a character I've been studying since I was like 7.
Yeah. Just have Superman in one scene. Just have Superman in one scene. But
I mean, one started.
Yeah. I honestly would love to do that. And I'm not even joking. I think I could nail it.
I think you should.
And if anything, I thought of Alex Garland, but then I was like, nah, Alex, I'll do it.
Yeah. Big
I think Alex would kill it too. But either way, everything this show has offered so far when it talks about political power, RB3, I don't know if you noticed that so far.
Yeah, that's a big that has that's like almost the whole episode. That's
so cool. Even in the first, you're right. Even in the first episode, we get a little glimpse of that, of like national superpowers using technology to like steal corporate espionage and all this shit. Where I'm like, yeah, give me more of that, because that's real. That's what we're seeing now. And that's why, to me, I don't know where this show is going, which, like you said, is part of the mystery. But so far, I'm in. And I'm gonna watch Under the Silver Lake, Sabrina. And eventually, you'll watch Devs.
I'll start Devs tomorrow. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, me, I started it like late last night and pretty much just like went all the way through it. Yeah, I mean they're 50-minute episodes, so there's a little bit on the longer side.
There's one that's like 38 minutes. I think.
There's one that's 38. Okay,
I think it's 2, episode 2 or 3.
Oh, okay, yeah. So they're a little they're on the longer side, but I think it's definitely worth the binge. And salute to Hulu for having all the FX shows on there.
Right, yeah. Hulu is like my jam right now because of that, and because of shows. I mentioned Rami on our episode like 2 weeks ago. I binged Rami. I'm binging all these like Hulu / FX shows.
They have good movies too. They have a good movie selection. I think it's completely underrated.
Yeah, Annihilation.
Annihilation's on Hulu. Yeah.
Parasite's coming to Hulu. Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
It's on Hulu.
It's on Hulu.
Yeah. So
I love Hulu right now. That's what I told. I gave a shout out to Snelling. I said it on his podcast, and I think I've told you guys too. The idea of like Disney taking over the world as far as content wise, and how all the like kiddie, cool, popular popcorn stuff is going to Disney Plus, and all the edgy, weird stuff that they don't know what to do with, they just toss it on Hulu. Right. And I love that, because I'm like, I can still get cool, big budget shows that are weird, like Devs, because it's a weird show. You know, prepare yourself, Sabrina. It's weird.
Well, I love weird.
Yeah, and it's great but it still has like big budget with a great score and great cinematography, and it's like a movie.
Yeah, and the production design of the show is absolutely so insane.
Good. I was like,
because there's a building that is like the Devs building. And I'm telling you, like the way I was blown away. I'm like, did they build all this, or is this visual effects?
And they did. They built it.
Yeah, they built that. Yeah, that's crazy stuff.
I saw the behind the scenes. I think it came out like, no joke, like 3 days ago. They did a behind the scenes production design. I'll send it to you, man, if you want.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh no, we built it. And I was like, yo, that's that Disney money.
yeah.
Behind a really weird show. And I like what you said, RB3, and this will be the last thing I'll say about Devs. Is the idea of giving this kind of budget scope on a show to a guy like an Alex Garland, who is very much like a writer-director, my vision, no writer's room, like you said. This is ride or die with me type stuff that doesn't really exist anymore. Everything is by committee, especially movies, which is why I think movies are eventually all heading to streaming. That's my prediction. As far as quality movies are going to streaming, and then the big crazy 20 action scene movies made by like 20 people inside a room is going to be in the theaters. But it's such a cool example of giving that budget and that scope to a guy like an Alex Garland, who's could be a hit or miss, like as we've said before with Annihilation and Ex Machina, where Annihilation is kind of like it didn't make a lot of money, wasn't much of a hit, and Ex Machina won Oscars and people love it. So you never know what you're going to get. And that's why I'm excited for not just the show, but the idea of the show, of giving that much power to a smart guy who just wants to make art and whatever he wants to make. So We'll end the episode by talking about some of the stuff he's written because, man, this guy has written some really interesting stuff as far as screenplay and as far as novels. He wrote The Beach. Have you guys seen The Beach?
Yeah, Danny Boyle directed that one.
Yeah, and 28 Days Later, another Danny Boyle movie.
Boyle film. Yep. Sunshine, also another Danny.
Sunshine.
Yeah,
he's a Danny Boyle homie.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be our throwback this week. So we could probably celebrate.
Oh, you guys did the Danny Boyle episode?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the movie Never Let Me Go.
See, you brought this up before, and I haven't.
It's probably definitely, if I had to make a list of like my top 100 of all time, this is on there somewhere.
Wow.
It's with Casey Mulligan, Keira Knightley, Andrew Garfield. Alex Garland wrote the screenplay for it, and I actually didn't even know about that until like 2 days ago.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's based off of a novel, and he adapted it into a screenplay. And it's one of the most interesting things because now it makes so much sense, not from like a technological standpoint or anything, because obviously we have like, the like horror sci-fi with Annihilation, and then like the sci-fi thriller kind of with Ex Machina, like Grounded. This one's like remember when I told you guys about the sci-fi romances that I love them? This is another one of those. But it's not like a sci-fi with any like technological stuff or anything like that, but it's just this other version of our world, basically, where some stuff it is crazy. It is so cool that it is genuinely heartbreaking, but it's a sci-fi romance type of drama film.
Yeah.
So right up my alley. Right up my alley.
I'll watch that. That sounds great.
Yeah, I really love it. I'm probably gonna end up watching it again tomorrow.
I'm laughing because you said Andrew Garfield.
Already. It's not just because of Andrew Garfield. This was actually, I think I talked about it. It might have been with you guys. This was one of the first things I saw him in. I saw it on Tumblr. Because it came out. Let me check what year. It came out in 2010. So so this was this and The Social Network. I think I ended up seeing like the same year. I don't know which one first.
Yeah.
But I saw both of them because this was all the rage on Tumblr. People were posting quotes and shots from the movie and everything. It is such a very like interesting story. It is completely outlandish. It's cool that it's like based off of a novel. I didn't know about that. So
I mean, it's the idea of like you can tell that Alex Garland is like sci-fi till I die kind of guy.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating because real quick, he also wrote Dread. Remember Dread?
Yeah.
Carl Urban Dread. That was a good movie.
That's another one that the Schmoes No Connection got into.
They promoted. Yeah, they were promoting the crap out of that movie. He wrote Devil May Cry. Have you guys played Devil May Cry?
The video game?
Yeah.
I haven't played that. No, I haven't played that.
He wrote one of the video games for Devil May Cry. And let me see what else he's written real quick before we take off. Oh, yeah. Let me do this real quick, too. I have to, and this is me, give a shout out to his DP, who's done Ex Machina, Annihilation, and Devs. His name is Rob Hardy, BSC. He also has like a BSc added to it.
Yeah, British Society of Cinematographers.
There you go. Him, Rob Hardy. And then I have to give a shout out to all the composers he's worked with. And then obviously he always works with one actress that started out doing nothing in Ex Machina to like being an alien in Annihilation to now the lead of Devs. So I have to give a shout out to, I believe her name is Sonoya Mizuno. She's half Japanese, half British.
Yeah, she was also one of Emma Stone's roommates in La La Land.
She was, and I've seen that scene a million times. It's one of my favorites, and she's great.
Oh.
And she's a dancer.
Yeah.
Did I say her name right? Sonoya.
I think you said it right. I think you said it right.
But she was Kyoko in Annihilation, and then she was the alien and she was the student in the first half of Annihilation. I don't know if you guys caught that, but I did.
Yep, I did. I did when I was watching it.
And then now she's the lead of one of the leads of Devs. And she has, I don't know what you think RB3 so far, but oh my God, she's killing it. In my opinion, she's killing it. So shout out to her and shout out to Alex giving her an opportunity to expand her acting persona from like just being a robot to like now being the lead of a show, which is incredible.
So. Yeah, 100%. I think you know, we're talking about things that he has written before in the past, and you know, Danny Boyle, the Danny Boyle connection. Sunrise is one of my favorite sci-fi movies. I think
you mean Sunshine, right?
Sunshine. I'm sorry, yeah, Sunshine. Yeah. Sunshine is one of my favorite sci-fi movies. The ending is not the greatest, but I think everything leading up to the ending was like mind-blowing, philosophical, this like deep meditation on like the end of society, like the very, very end of society. I think it takes place in like 3000 AD or something like that. So it's like really far in the future. But yeah, that's one of the ones I want to shout out to. And then shouting out, you know, and in terms of like his movies that he's directed, the Rob Hardy, who's his cinematographer, that's a great connection as well. And I'm trying to find the production designer that he usually works with too. I believe the name is Mark Digbley. Yes. He did the production design on Ex Machina, Slumdog Millionaire, Ex Machina. So all of these films, and he just murders it, and that's another big part of the success of Alex Garland's filmography. I feel like
that's the other thing that my final shout out would be what you said, RB3. Alex Garland isn't just the pretty sci-fi guy to me. To me, he combines the perfect blending of CGI and really, really good production design and real life, you know, practical effects that work so well. And I think that's what makes sci-fi, in my opinion. You know, we haven't done an episode on Ridley Scott, but I've talked to you, RB3, about it before. Right. If I had to pick a favorite director, that's my guy. Like Ridley Scott and I are like 100% eye to eye. I'm inspired by Ridley Scott so much. And I think that's what I appreciate so much about Alien. And the idea of using a practical, ugly creature, but still having that sci-fi brand. And I think Alex Garland is like almost a prodigy of that. And that's why I love it. So for sure. Sorry, this episode went way long and I will take all the blame.
No, not at all.
I love it.
Alex Garland takes the blame. Could be like he brings up a lot of ideas, you know. People can gather so many different things from his films. So that's
Alex Garland, stop making smart cinema, man. Stop making our episodes.
We blame you.
We blame you. Your fault. No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Either way, guys, thank you so much for indulging me in this rant and in this conversation. Where obviously, I was gonna say where can the people find you, but I guess it's right there.
The Lord there is right there. At Director RB3 on Twitter, Instagram.
And at Sabrina X Monica on Twitter and Instagram.
There you go. And you can find me at Squad Leader Ace. Guys, and for the Meaning of Podcast, I'm Andres.
This is RB3.
I'm Sabrina.
And we're peacing out.
Dope.
Cool.
All right. I'm in the.
Thank you, guys.